go out in the community, interact.
Okay.
Very good. Oh, yes, I'm seeing that the video is being recorded. Just one disclaimer, too, is, for the most part, this information will stay pretty constant. But there's always changes in, recycling markets. So some of the things that I talk about may fluctuate over time, depending on how long you keep this recording. So if you ever have any follow-up questions, always check our website as well. But I'll jump right into it. All of our operations in the solid waste division of the Environmental Resources Department are essentially founded on this solid waste hierarchy. And a lot of folks are probably familiar with the 3 R's, right? Reduce, reuse, and recycle. We always order them, or we always list them in that order because that's their order of preference. So recycling tends to get the lion's share of attention in the world because we're all familiar with it. It's fairly accessible, at least in our part of the world. But waste reduction and reuse, if we can do that before we ever even have to worry about recycling, that's even better. Beyond that, we have then composting, resource recovery in the form of waste energy, and then landfilling at the bottom. And our operations within our department are based on that. So the waste reduction and reuse, we kind of cover that through the outreach and education that we do. The Recycling Center Plus covers the recycle. The hazardous waste facility has the reuse option. And then finally, the composting organic waste. We have our yard waste compost site. We have a waste energy facility. And then at the bottom, landfilling, we do operate the Kalmar Landfill located west of Rochester. So all of these functions are essentially to make the most beneficial use out of our available resources and to send as little material into the ground as possible. So just some photos here, waste reduction through education. We partner with Corey Hill Nature Center to offer tours to pretty much all of the 6th grade classes, at least from the public schools in Rochester, to come through the waste energy facility, take a tour, learn about our solid waste facility. We've got learning stations set up in the conference room at the facility. The top left picture is up in the control room, so you can see how participants on those tours tend to just press up against the glass and look into that pit and basically just check out everything and take it all in. And we can watch a video here if we get time on the waste energy facility. Just some other outreach activities. That picture on the left there was at the annual Arbor Day event that RPU hosts. Kind of a bummer. It would have taken place last Friday, which is Arbor Day, usually the 4th Friday in the month of April. There's been a lot of activities like that. Earth Day was a week ago today. But unfortunately, with the circumstances being that they are, we've had to, dial back a lot of these, public interactions. And then the picture on the right was through a collaboration or event through the Post Bulletin when they did their student design and ad. So I believe that was a 4th grade student at Franklin Montessori that drew that picture of our services with the proper place for your waste. And then finally, a quick plug here for a program that we call the Environmental Achievement Awards. We co-host this awards program with Rochester Public Utilities, and it's essentially an event to recognize individuals, organizations, and businesses who are going above and beyond to make Olmsted County a more sustainable community. So in this picture here, there's members of a golf course who took measures to drastically reduce the amount of water that they were drawing from their deep well to irrigate. We've got folks who go around and do nature presentations for students. It's a mixed bag of environmental activities. So if you know anybody who is out there doing good works, I'd invite you to go check that out on our website, or just do a Google search, Olmsted County Environmental Achievement Awards, and you find a little more information about that, because we're always happy to take more nominations. Getting back to that waste reduction here, these are just a few examples I like to throw up on the screen of basically buying in bulk to reduce packaging waste. So anytime you can buy something that's perishable, it makes sense to buy it in a larger container, from dry goods in your pantry all the way to toilet paper, laundry detergent, things like that. I think the grocery stores still have a ban on bringing your own reusable bag just for health concerns, but whenever that gets lifted, always an easy way to reduce the amount of plastic bags we accumulate by taking the cloth bag. This is a handy tool on our website called the Waste Wizard, and I'm going to duck out of the presentation here real quick to bring up the website, our website. So if you were to go to olmstedwaste.com, or if you were to go to our Recycling Center Plus page or Hazardous Waste Facility page, you would end up with, we got a lot of, kind of extra information on there because we've had a lot of changes in our operations as a result of the, COVID-19 pandemic. But you can scroll down and get to this Waste Wizard. So if you had a question on how to get rid of, paint thinner, it would tell you to bring it to the Olmsted County Hazardous Waste Facility. It would list the hours. Currently, the Haz Waste Facility is closed through, I should change that, through May 4th. But it's just a really handy tool to tell you how to get rid of something. So if you got, mattress, again, bring it to the Recycling Center Plus, it'll give you the fee. So you get the idea. It's got over 500 types of items in the Waste Wizard. So if you have any questions on how to get rid of the stuff filling up your garage or spare bedroom, I would welcome you to use this tool just for a little bit more ease of understanding. And I'm going to just jump to, I'm going to pull up something just for later. I'm going to jump back to that recycling cart guide here in just a few minutes. I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, back in the presentation. If for any reason you're going to be making your way to the Recycling Center Plus, the compost site, or hazardous waste facility once that's open again, I just want to point out that there's a lot of construction going on College View Road or County State Highway 9. You basically got to come through town and get on this essentially frontage road, Campus Drive Southeast, which is going to snake its way back to Silver Creek Road. So a lot of construction going on. They're putting in a roundabout or traffic circle, right at that intersection, which will be very welcome because it's a very busy intersection when you got to take a left-hand turn. But just something to point out in case you're making your way to our facilities. Come through town, come from the west. This brings us to our first permanent facility, the Household Hazardous Waste Facility. With the potential to be especially harmful to people and the environment, we want to make sure that folks are disposing of their poisonous, flammable, and corrosive materials properly. So that's everything from paints, stains, and varnishes, which we get a ton of, to rechargeable batteries. I like to point that out because rechargeable batteries are particularly problematic if they're thrown in a curbside container. Definitely don't want them. They are recyclable, but you can't put them in a curbside recycling cart because they can't be processed that way. And the lithium-ion batteries in particular are volatile and explode, catch on fire if they're damaged. And across the industry, across the country, it's a problem that's causing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage by people improperly disposing of their rechargeable batteries. So we want to make sure that those are ending up at the hazardous waste facility, or some other participating retailer if you come across one. But we usually recommend our own facility. Currently closed, but will reopen once the hazardous waste facility does, is the reuse center, which is just right off. It's in the same building, but just a different door as the hazardous waste facility. Like I said, a lot of paints, a lot of stains. I don't know how full it would be at this point because it's going to just be the stock that was in there as of a few weeks ago before they shut it down. But anything that you would be able to see in those shelves or come across would be free for the taking. So if we can use up those products before we have to worry about disposing of them, that's what we want to do. Probably not going to find enough of one single paint color to paint your whole room in your house, but if you've got a smaller project, it might be just what you need. And, from what I'm told, there's actually a number of local, drama classes or theater productions that use the site for, temporary sets and things of that nature. I was at a school and one of the teachers was saying that he likes to make birdhouses with his son, and he gets his paint and whatever else he comes across from this facility. So just an added note there. And if you really want to get in there when there's lots of products, I'm told that the end of summer, early fall is really when, I mean, they've got products coming in here a lot of time. We can't ever guarantee what's in there. But people are tending to clean out their garages at the end of summer. So usually there's a lot of stuff in there. Like I said, end of summer, early fall, if you want to give that a look. As a benefit to residents who live in the smaller communities in Olmsted County, we do have household hazardous waste mobile collections. Now, these dates are definitely up in the air right now. Orinoco was scheduled to be the 5th. I think I've updated these dates anyway for 2020. Either way, it's kind of a moot point because Orinoco is definitely postponed until the end of the year. Stewartville looks like it might be up in the air as well. But you know, if for any of you that might live in some of the smaller communities in Olmsted County, you're probably familiar with these, but it's just an added service. And yeah, a lot of these dates are going to be subject to change. So I'm just kind of pointing that out in case you're recording and you want to go back to this. Don't use these dates because they, again, subject to change. The Recycling Center Plus now, I like to put up this slide here just because if we do have the updated operations and the updated traffic flow. People used to be able to come in the entrance here and go through the facility, right? So we still have all the curbside or the recycling drop-off bins to the right, but folks used to be able to go through the facility to handle their electronics, their furniture payments, things like that. All of the payments now are taking place outside the facility on the south side, right underneath where you see the blue awning. And just some other changes too. We can't process credit cards or make change, so we're just trying to drill that in on our website. And we talk to people, just bring a checkbook or try to look up the price, call in advance, use our Waste Wizard tool to get rid of items. Make sure you just have the correct amount of cash as well. And they've actually got a kind of a neat way of doing that. They're collecting it in big buckets on long sticks so people don't have to get out of their cars. So they're trying to do this all with social distancing in mind. This brings us to the Recycling Center Plus on what you can take. Aluminum cans, clear glass bottles and jars, colored glass bottles and jars, clean corrugated cardboard, paper. I need to update this slide too. I thought I had my most recent version here, but I don't. We can now take plastics number 5. So clean dairy containers. So that's going to be your yogurt tubs, margarine tubs, Cool-Whip containers, things like that are now also acceptable at the Recycling Center Plus. So I need to update that as well. And then all sorts of scrap metal. And that's probably a good time for me to bounce back to our slide here. Not that one. So we just released this recycling cart guide within our last newsletter a week or so ago, talking about this is what you can safely put in your recycling cart regardless of who your waste hauler is. So, clean paper, cardboard, and paperboard. And that's a little bit of a difference. The Recycling Center Plus does not accept the paperboard items, the cereal boxes, the cracker boxes. Our end market for corrugated cardboard does not want that. The products that they're using the corrugated cardboard for requires a certain level of structural integrity, and the paper fibers or the plant fibers that comprise a cereal box are not going to be as durable as the plant paper fibers that you have in a corrugated box. So it all comes down to the quality of the material, and cereal boxes and cracker boxes are certainly recyclable in your curbside bin, and they are recyclable in terms of being able to turn them into another product. But with fiber recycling, it's usually going to get downcycled or degraded partially in the recycling process, right? It's not like a glass bottle or an aluminum can or a steel or tin soup can where you can melt that down and remold it over and over and over again. The fiber recycling has a finite life cycle to it, so you can take that Amazon box and recycle it and, you know, pulp it down and reform it. And part of those plant fibers are going to get made, you know, likely to make a new cardboard box, or at least possibly to make a new cardboard box. But you're not going to be taking an Amazon box, recycling it, and making it a new Amazon box without adding in virgin wood pulp. And those cereal boxes could get downcycled into you know, paper towels or egg cartons or something of that nature. And at some point, you essentially reach the end of the line. So egg cartons, is, I'll stay on that example, is a good end of the line product. So we tell people to throw egg cartons in the garbage because the fibers that comprise them have been degraded to the point where they don't really have any structural integrity to add back into reforming it into a box, or whether it's a cereal box or a shipping container, shipping cardboard box. So probably more information than what you wanted to hear about that. But again, just a reason why we don't accept the paperboard. Going back to the plastics again, 1, 2, and 5, keep the cap on when you recycle it. And then the milk or juice cartons, we refer to those types of materials as aseptic packaging, or you know, kind of a composite of you know, plant fibers and, you know, maybe plastic liners. There's a lot of materials going on in those, and recycling technology has caught up to be able to, you know, accept those or recycle them and recycle them. And I just want to point out, you know, almost as important, and I'm going to just see if I can zoom in to see if that helps out. Very important to keep these items out of your recycling cart. The plastic bags are recyclable if you bring them back to a grocery store, big box retailer. Not recyclable in a curbside cart because they wrap around the sorting equipment. And I'm going to play a video that shows how our recyclables are sorted out here. The batteries, we talked about those. Single-use alkaline batteries can go in your trash, but it's the rechargeable, the lithium-ion, the nickel-cadmium. Those are the ones that, and other rechargeable ones, we want to see those at the hazardous waste facility for their, you know, the content that makes them up. And, you know, if those were to get thrown into the garbage, that would be problematic, not only because it could be a potential danger for the people hauling the material and for the people processing it. We don't want those heavy metals being processed in our waste energy facility. And while we do have a very robust pollution control you know, system in place at the waste energy facility, there's no sense in taxing it any more than is necessary with the standard waste that comes through. Tanglers, hoses, cords, garden hoses, electrical cords, wires, things like that. That's especially topical around you know, the holidays when people are throwing Christmas lights out. They are recyclable. You can bring them to our Recycling Center Plus. I know RPU has been taking them at their service center too for a number of years, but I can't put them in the recycling bin. Electronics. Shredded paper is really problematic too, just because it's so small. We can't process it at a materials recovery facility. We can accept it at the Recycling Center Plus because it would come in source separated, so we can bale up the shredded paper along with the, you know, full sheets of white office paper, no problem. And then food waste is a big one. You know, don't throw any food in the recycling bin. And then styrofoam, foam packaging, that's also problematic. Just throw that in the garbage. And with that, that's probably a good segue into, I can minimize my screen here, into showing how all of these materials do get sorted out. So I'm going to play a video for you. It's created by Demcon Materials Recovery Facility. So this is a company up in Shakopee, Minnesota, that operates a MRF, Materials Recovery Facility. There's a number of these in the Twin Cities metro area, but this just shows a really good example of how they sort that out. And I will say it is kind of geared towards children, so just keep that in mind, but really the information is quite topical regardless of your age. So
We're all kids.
And can I just get a thumbs up, Doug, if is that sound coming through for folks?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Looks like it. Chime in if it's not working. Very good.
All right, how many of you recycle at home? You ever wonder what happens to the stuff you recycle? Years ago, almost everything we threw away ended up right here in the landfill. Whoa! Today, thanks to recycling, we're keeping more and more of this stuff out of the landfill and turning it back into something useful instead. Oh, how many of you use one of these at home or at school? With single-stream recycling, you can fill this up with all of your recyclables. And here at DEMCON's Materials Recovery Facility, we'll sort through it and figure out what to do with everything. It's a big job, but with the help of some special equipment, we can process over 20 tons of recyclables every hour. You want to see how we do it? Not everything you throw away can be recycled. Some materials are just really hard to turn back into new products. Luckily, about 75% of the stuff we throw away can be recycled. Most of these recyclables fall into one of 4 categories: fibers, metals, plastics, and glass. Aww. Let's take a journey through our recycling facility and find out how DEMCON deals with each type of material. Fibers is what we call things made from paper and cardboard. Everything from juice boxes to magazines to grocery bags, because they're all made up of tiny plant fibers. See? This is a great recyclable material because we can take old paper and cardboard and turn it into new paper and cardboard again and again. The recovery process for recyclables starts here on the tipping floor, where trucks drop off mixed recyclables for us to process. These recyclables come from all over the Twin Cities area and beyond. All day long, our loaders scoop up the recyclables into our recovery system, and they're on their way to a new life. When it comes to separating cardboard out from the rest of the waste, the old corrugated cardboard screen helps us get the job done fast. This machine is filled with a bed of spinning discs that carries cardboard across while letting other kinds.
I always like to pause it right here just to illustrate, again, why we don't want those tanglers ending up in the curbside bin. You can see with the sorting equipment, the plastic bags, the hoses wrap around that equipment very easily. And I actually had an opportunity to tour this facility a few years ago, and it was back at that early, right here, that drum that's kind of spitting materials out. There's actually a garden hose that was, whipping around that really fast. So you can see that the tanglers are especially problematic. And then it's also a good point of why we want the caps left on bottles when you recycle them, is that helps the material keep its 3-dimensional shape and keep it from getting crushed. And it still might. It's just an added measure to help the plastic bottle stay 3-dimensional, just for the underlying benefit that if it does get smushed, it has a potential to, flow through the system more as a 2-dimensional piece of like paper or something like that. So again, just a quick illustration of why we want the caps on the bottles.
Other kinds of recyclables fall through. Hey, look, there goes our little red box. Our old newsprint screen uses spinning rubber stars that separate a different kind of fiber from the waste stream. Newsprint. This is an important type of fiber that can be turned into brand new magazines and newspapers. Sometimes our machines get a little help from sharp-eyed workers who sort through the recyclables as they flow by on a conveyor. Here in the fiber cabin, we make sure that all the different kinds of fibers end up in the right place, like our little friend here. Hey, where'd you go? The fiber baler squeezes different kinds of fiber into bales and binds them up tight with wire. These bales can be transported to a paper mill, where they'll be turned into brand new paper and cardboard. See you later, fiber. Metal is used to make all kinds of things, from bicycles to bridges. The metal we collect here at DEMCON is very valuable because it can be melted down and recycled into useful new products. Our powerful magnetic separator rips steel cans and other metal recyclables right out of the stream. That's one powerful magnet. Did you know that some metals aren't magnetic? Aluminum, for example. For things like cans that you can't grab with a magnet, DEMCON uses this high-tech machine called the eddy current separator. It creates a powerful electromagnetic field that causes aluminum to jump right out of the waste. Pretty cool, huh? Whee! The container baler compresses the sorted metal into bales that can be stacked for easy storage. These bales can be melted down and turned into shiny doom products by manufacturers all over the world. Just don't try to move one by yourself. This bale of aluminum cans weighs more than 1,000 pounds. Oh, over here. I think we found it. Jeez. Did you know Americans use 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour? That's why it's so important to make sure that we're recycling as much of this plastic as possible. Not all plastic is the same though, so to make sure that it can be recovered properly, we need to do some extra sorting. Fortunately, DEMCON has a piece of amazing equipment that makes this process a lot easier. This is the optical sorter. Using an infrared camera connected to a super fast computer, it's able to figure out what kind of plastic container is passing by and blast it onto a separate conveyor with a jet of air. It's so fast it can sort up to 6 tons of plastic bottles every hour. That's a lot better than letting it sit around in a landfill. Oh, here it is. Right in there. Glass objects are all around us, and they are very important recyclable because glass can be melted down and reused over and over again without losing any quality. This keeps glass out of the landfill and saves a lot of energy. You hear that? That's the sound of our glass breaker screen smashing up the jars, bottles, and other glass containers that end up inside of it. Uh-oh. We drop the glass fragments into this big bay. From here, it'll be sent to another facility that uses special equipment to separate the pieces by color and size so they can be melted down and turned into new glass. And the process starts all over again.
All right. So, I like to play those or that video for folks just because it really it makes our waste real, and that's another benefit of why we offer the tours through our solid waste facilities, particularly with the waste energy facility. It shows that everything has to go somewhere, and for a lot of folks, once garbage is picked up at the curb, it's out of sight and out of mind. And again, it's a way of making our waste real, and that someone has to deal with it. And we want to make sure that things are being safe for the people who work in those types of facilities. And yeah. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. That's out on YouTube. So if you just do a quick Google search or go to YouTube and search DEMCON green grades, you should be able to come up with that if you want to check that out for future reference. Yeah, back to the Recycling Center Plus here. Just a shot of what it would look like if you were inside the facility, kind of the one-stop drop-off. Everything from tires to TVs, couches to carpet to concrete. It's really that facility that's going to serve as that place to clean out your garage. And it's flexible in a lot of things that it can take. There's fees for a number of the items, and those fees help support the operation. So again, I'd recommend going back to the website, olmstedwaste.com, if you do have future questions on that. A slide to represent that we have volume-based fees in Olmsted County. So essentially, the more you throw away, the more you're going to pay. At the Recycling Center Plus, $5 per 30 gallons, up to a cubic yard, which is essentially $30 per cubic yard. We already talked about the plastics recycling, so I can actually just gloss over this. The 1s and the 2s, and then I've got the number 5s, which are highlighted, are going to be your acceptable materials. And For a number of years, you may have seen, literature or graphics from your hauler that would have said plastics 1 through 7 can go in the recycling bin. That's never because 3s, 4s, 6s, or 7s were, particularly desirable or recyclable. It was just sort of an effort to make the recycling process easier for the consumer, the resident, and it was intended to maximize the good recyclables, unfortunately at the expense of getting some of the recyclables that weren't of value. But with recycling markets tightening up, across the globe, you'll probably be seeing more and more places being strict on saying, okay, this is what we want in the bin, keep it to this, because contamination is a real issue, and try to keep that down whenever we can. This was an old slide that I had before we had our new recycling guide, so I could probably get rid of this. But a lot of the information is the same on what you can put in there. Same with the keep out of the recycling bin. The plastic bag, shredded paper, we covered that with our recycling flyer. And by the way, that recycling flyer, that guide, is on our website under the educational resource page. Just a quick slide here that shows that recycling saves energy. I got these numbers from the EPA's website. That it was from a model that they had, so you could put in a recyclable item and calculate how long you could power a various household item that takes electricity. I'll just jump down to the aluminum can, which is essentially the gold standard of recycling. So by this, we're saying that every time you recycle an aluminum can, you save enough energy to power a 60-watt light bulb for up to 20 hours. And from an efficiency standpoint, every time you recycle an aluminum can, you're saving 95% of the energy that would have been required to create a new aluminum can from ore that would have to be mined from the earth. It's a material or an ore called bauxite, which then they have to separate out the aluminum. Very energy-intensive process. All right, if we think back to that solid waste hierarchy that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, we covered the reduce, reuse, recycle. This brings us to the composting tier of the hierarchy. And we do operate a yard waste compost site, so it's going to accept primarily leaves and grass clippings. That makes up the vast majority of the material that we get at the site. Just a layout. I could probably get rid of this slide here too, just because most people have been to the site. If you do use it within the last 2 years, prior to the new layout, it was basically one entrance, one exit here at the end of Silver Creek Road, but that contributed to backup. So the new one-way in up the road has been a big benefit to help reduce the congestion. If you get rid of leaves in the fall and you remember going back there, a number of years ago, you remember that Silver Creek Road would get backed up pretty easily. So, and then I'll just point out the yard waste drop off. The big pile is on the east side of the site, and we do have finished compost available for self-serve on the north side of the pile. The composting process. We have the organic matter in the form of the yard waste that's dropped off, so primarily the leaves and grass clippings, naturally occurring microorganisms, oxygen, moisture, temperature, and time. And here we have a picture of our scarab machine going down the windrows of compost, mixing it together. And they periodically do that just to make sure that all the material is subject to the higher heat, which would be found by the decomposition process by the microorganisms happening towards the center of the pile. And you can actually see a big plume of steam. I just realized I'm not in my slideshow mode here, so I'm going to jump back there. That should make things a little bit easier. You can see that big plume of steam that arises from all the heat that is taking place. And that there's no leaves on the trees, so it's probably relatively chilly out. But those piles are tested for temperature, and they can get in excess of 140 degrees. To help kill any bacteria that shouldn't be in there. Or we get a lot of questions about weed seeds in the composting process. That we can't ever guarantee that it's completely free in the finished product, but we know that our temperatures do regularly get hot enough to kill weed seeds. And then typically when the trommel machine is running, just a few photos to illustrate how that works. I'm gonna see if I can put my sound down here just a little bit, because every time I forward on this slide, it gets really loud. So I do have a video embedded. Oh, shoot. I do have a video embedded in there with the trommeling process. You can see when it's up and running, it's filtering out those sticks and large items there to kick it out in a discard pile. And it goes up to the finished product. All right, just some benefits. The compost is a nutrient-rich, organic-rich additive for flower beds, gardens, and lawns. There is a pretty easy process to get it. It's on the north side of the compost site these days. It's a self-serve process. So show up. There are donation boxes to help offset the cost of operations. But there's nobody there to actually charge a fee as it was a few years ago when you had to pay for it at the scale house. So if you're interested, it's available. This brings us to our waste energy facility. So initially opened in 1987 with 2 units or 2 combustion units to process up to 200 tons of garbage per day. A 3rd unit was added back in 2010, which essentially doubled the facility's capacity from 200 tons of garbage per day up to 400 tons of garbage per day. We use the garbage as a fuel source to generate steam and electricity. The steam, both of those in some cases is distributed to buildings on the Olmsted County District Energy System, which I got a map of that coming up here in a couple slides. Big benefit is we reduce the amount of waste going to the landfill by about 90%. So for every 10 garbage trucks coming into the facility, we have about 1 roll-off container of ash going out to the facility. I need to update this because this, again, is maybe a presentation a couple models old here. The number of facilities receiving steam and electricity, that's maybe closer to 25 plus buildings. We've had some buildings go to a different fuel source for heating. But you can see kind of the aerial map shows we supply steam about as far to the west as the Rochester Public Library, the Mayo Civic Center, and the Government Center City Hall. So just an aerial view of the steam line. If you remember last summer along 4th Street Southeast, number of intersections were under construction to just make some updates and fix some areas along the steam line. This caricature was drawn by one of the nuns from CC Heights in, I think there's a date on there, 1994, which is kind of a simplification of what's going on at the plant, but still pretty accurate. We're using garbage as a fuel source, heating up large reservoirs of water to create steam, which we then pipe through turbine generators to create electricity. The steam pressure is reduced and then piped out to buildings on that district energy system. The leftover ash is then brought out to the Kalmar Landfill. We've got some pictures of the waste energy facility. And rather than go through all of this, I do want to bring up our video that we have for the waste energy facility. And just for your reference, you can come back to the garbage and recycling page, navigate to our waste energy facility, and we do have our YouTube video that we created a couple years back. So I'm going to play this in just a few minutes.
It can be difficult to see any value in garbage. For many, as long as it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Waste.
Olmsted County, however, sees garbage differently. For over 3 decades, the Olmsted Waste-to-Energy Facility has been creating clean, renewable energy from waste that cannot be reduced, reused, recycled, or composted. Whether it comes from a household or a business, all garbage generated in Olmsted County is brought to the Olmsted Waste-to-Energy Facility. Before entering the facility, Haulers stop at the scale house to be weighed and are charged a tipping fee for each ton of garbage they deliver. Funds collected through the tipping fee are used to sustain a variety of operations within the Olmsted County Integrated Solid Waste Management System. Once weighed, a truck will access the tipping floor to dump its load into the holding pit. Facility operators located in the control room above the tipping floor use a crane and grapple to mix the garbage. This creates a better fuel and reveals bulky materials that may need to be removed from the pit. Mixed garbage is then loaded into a hopper and gravity fed into a combustion chamber. As flames reach temperatures of more than 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, water circulating within the boiler is heated and turns into steam. The steam is routed through steam turbines to generate electricity. The steam is also supplied to buildings in the Olmsted County District energy system for heating and cooling. Excess electricity not required by the district energy system is sold to the local power grid. To ensure environmental protection, emissions created through the combustion process are cleansed in the scrubber. Here, acid gases are neutralized with a mixture of lime and water, while heavy metals like mercury and lead are trapped with powdered activated carbon. Before air is released from the facility, it passes through a series of large fabric filters to capture particulates. The facility's emissions are continuously monitored to make sure they are well below strict state and federal air pollution control limits. After passing through the facility, only 10% of the garbage's original volume is left in the form of ash. This ash is brought to the Olmsted County Kalmar Landfill, where it will be permanently stored in an environmentally protective holding cell. Waste to energy has proven to be a safe and effective means of managing our wastes locally. Thanks to the investment our community has made in this facility, we will continue to serve the needs of an ever-growing population through environmentally responsible waste management. For more information, please visit olmstedwaste.com or call 507-328-7070.
So again, that video is on our website if you'd like to reference that at some future point. I know we're getting close to 1 o'clock here, so I'm going to speed things along. This was just a cross-section of one of the older units, units 1 and 2. You can see that that garbage is dropped in the hopper. It then goes, it's gravity fed to a series of reciprocating discs that would bring it to the combustion chamber. Maximize the slide there. Just a picture of one of the combustion chambers in action. You can see it's, I believe this is unit 3 going on a continuous slope here. These walls here are where the water, the big tubes filled with water, are essentially stored. I'm not going to get into all the numbers here in this graphs. I really like to point these out as illustrations for where we are in relation to our permit limits. So as the video stated, we comply with either state level Minnesota Pollution Control Agency regulations or federal Environmental Protection Agency regulations. And I guess whichever of the two is more stringent, that's what we have to comply with. The blue bars in these bar charts here represent our permit limits, and the red and green bar charts here on the left represent acid gases for 1 and 2. This is units 1 and 2 in 1987. This is unit 3, which went in 2010. You'll notice we're a little bit closer to the permit limit in the NOx, you know, as of this data. That's not to say that it's any less efficient or, you know, good at doing its job. Just because it's a newer unit, it was subject to even more stringent regulations. So you can see, if you can see on the left, we've got a permit limit of 500 parts per million, whereas unit 3 was subject to, you know, 150 parts per million, for at least for the, you know, nitrogen oxide and some of these other acid gases have varying permit limits, but we are still underneath them. Getting into the heavy metals, we are nowhere near our permit limit for lead, mercury, cadmium. Again, that's a combination of the robust pollution control equipment that we have in place, it's also a, combination of, people just doing the right thing and, not throwing a lead acid battery in the garbage or all these things that should be handled properly. That's why we have the hazardous waste facility, and that's why these facilities complement each other as well as they do. This is getting us to the end here. Just a shot of a karst landscape. Much of southeastern Minnesota is characterized by, karst geology. So anything at the surface has the potential to drain into underlying aquifers relatively quickly. That makes siting a landfill rather difficult. And you can see with our map of Olmsted County here, we really only have one spot where we have, naturally occurring clay, which is about the only spot where we can put a landfill. These, bright red, orange spots are characterized by sinkholes in the underlying, geology, and obviously we don't want to put a landfill where a sinkhole is. So the Kalmar Landfill, located just west of Rochester, takes primarily 3 types of waste. So primarily ash from the waste energy facility. Here we've got a dozer spreading it out. We've got, the municipal solid waste or garbage cell. We have this so if they're doing work on the waste energy facility, they can bypass loads of garbage out to the cell. We've got the demolition cell, and that rounds out the 3. Just some cross sections of what we're doing to protect groundwater. The ash cell was built with a lot of barriers in mind. So we do have quite a bit of naturally occurring clay underneath all this, but we've got underneath the ash cell the 3 feet of compacted clay, a high density polyethylene plastic liner. We got another 2.5 feet of compacted clay, another HDPE plastic liner here, and then the Leachate Collection system. Again, under the garbage cell, we also have compacted clay liner system and Leachate Collection system. Some pictures here that show the difference of the leachate. So when rain falls on the ash cell and the MSW cell, it's collected and that's piped out or pumped out and brought to the wastewater treatment center in Rochester. You can just see the difference between the leachate that filters through the ash from the waste energy facility and the leachate that filters through that standard household garbage cell. So quite a bit different. And then finally, while we don't want metals going into the garbage, we can pull out the ferrous metals with a giant magnet on the front end of an excavator. You can see this big pile of iron sitting behind the excavator. We can recycle that. Unfortunately, any aluminum that would go through the facility is kind of a double whammy because, one, you're losing out on recycling that pop can. It also melts onto the grates and creates a slag that's problematic for the operations. So periodically, our staff have to go in and kind of pry out that material, and it's essentially worthless at that point. Finally, here this shows the benefits of the landfill reclamation. Normally, I would get the previous year's data around February of the following year. So normally, I would have 2019's available, but with all the changes that have taken place with the COVID-19 pandemic, I haven't been able to get in touch with our assistant controller on that. But this still gives you an idea. As of the end of 2018, we had reclaimed 12,788 tons of ferrous metals, which we were able to sell for $2.2 million. And then we were also extracting out old buried municipal solid waste or garbage because we had available capacity at the waste energy facility. And through the time frame of 2012 to this information through the end of 2018, we had reclaimed 34,257 tons of garbage, which produced an estimated amount of 10,688,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, which had a value of $522,000. So there's a 7-year time frame where we were actually a less than zero landfill community 5 out of those 7 years because we were taking more out of the landfill than what we were actually putting in. And as of today, we still have decades worth of space in the landfill, which is a testament to our solid waste system and how we're handling it. because there just aren't many places to site a landfill. So we want to make sure we're preserving that space. Or again, not many places to site a landfill in our part of the state anyway. So we want to make sure we're preserving that landfill space. I am 2 minutes over my 1 o'clock time frame, so that brings me to the last slide here. If you do have questions, you're welcome to reach out to us. We're olmstedwaste.com. You can give us a call if you have a question. If you have any questions right now, I'm certainly happy to stay on the line for as long as people want to answer any questions that you might have marked down while I was talking. In either case, I really appreciate you inviting me to speak. I always like doing this, and fire away if you have any questions.
Well, I do have one question as far as the composting. If there are any future plans of composting garbage, food waste. I know we have a trash and we have recyclable. Is there consideration for getting another tub, another canister for food waste for composting?
Yeah, so my boss is more involved with those levels or those discussions taking place. Organics is kind of the new horizon, or one of the new horizons anyway, in the solid waste industry. I have not heard of anything yet where we would get to a larger scale third bin option just yet. I know there are discussions, again, like I said, that my boss is having with certain businesses that have an interest in organics collection of some sort. So nothing I can share at this point, but I guess that's kind of a stay tuned type question.
Okay.
I've got another question. I'm increasingly seeing plastic alternatives which are plant-based, but they require an industrial compost.
Yeah,
we're looking at.
Not anything that we're looking at right now. That is a question that we do get from time to time. I actually had a business reach out and say, they're going through a lot of styrofoam plates and plastic cutlery and things like that, and they were looking to switch to a, like you were saying, kind of a plant-based or soy-based material for that. And we're not at a point. I mean, we're permitted for yard waste at the site, so we can't handle that. I don't have a ton of background information on how successful those different materials break down, even in an industrialized setting. I have read some articles that were written out on the West Coast where they document the challenge of getting a quote unquote biodegradable fork to actually break down even in that industrial setting. So it's one of those things where I think people naturally gravitate towards that, thinking, yeah, that's good. We can reduce our reliance on oil to create that, but there are challenges from what I'm told. And again, I'm not an expert on that in particular, but I can say that I have not heard of anything, at least in our department, on pursuing any type of composting of those types of materials. So for the foreseeable future, we're still only accepting yard waste.
Yep.
Just one other question. As far as, because as Rotarians, we're looking for volunteer opportunities, and one item might be in a climate action type activity. And I was thinking of Arbor Day or the Earth Day. Do you have volunteer activities that are open?
Well, within our department, I can't think of anything that we would be soliciting volunteers per se. At this point, there are various community events in a typical year, right? So usually this time of year is some of our busiest, at least in terms of public outreach times. I mean, there's an annual event, or I think this would be the 5th or maybe the 6th Earth Fest that would have taken place a couple weeks ago, where you can have a booth set up and you can volunteer at that and help direct traffic and whatever. They're usually looking for volunteers with that.
Okay, well, just to,
Arbor Day is usually the last Friday in April. We didn't hold that this year. that would be if you wanted to have a booth or something like that. That would, RPU runs that, so you'd have to reach out to them. You know,
That's
in
okay.
terms of like volunteers that we would have within our department, I don't think we would have any need for that at this point. But in terms of like disseminating information and, you know, kind of helping spread the word on, you know, some of these proper things, like don't put your, you know, your garden hoses and things. I mean, that's always appreciated to help share that. So I don't know if you guys have a Facebook page, but you know, like following our Facebook post. So when we put something out there that, you know, so last week we did put out that recycling guide, and it was shared a number of times by people in the community. So that always helps. So
Okay.
things like that are just a simple way to get involved.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got a question about scrap metal. I see that you're recovering some of that from the landfills with the magnets, but is there a more efficient way to drop off scrap metal out at the facility?
At the Recycling Center Plus?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So you can bring scrap metal to, I'm going to jump back to just the layout at the OCRC right now. So as for scrap metal, you would just come through this main entrance. You tell them you have scrap metal. There is no fee to drop off scrap metal, so then they would just direct you back to one of the bins to drop that off. So yeah, absolutely. We would rather deal with the scrap metal by processing it at the Recycling Center Plus, as opposed to you know, handling it through the waste energy facilities. It's, even though we can extract the, you know, the ferrous metals out at the landfill, it's, you know, much better to handle it upstream, so to speak, because it's, you know, less wear and tear on the facility, at least on the waste energy facility.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Any others?
It was a good program. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you staying with me for the full time here. I know it's a lot to cover, and if you remember, you know, half of what we talked about, you're still ahead of the game. And again, I think just by participating in this type of, you know, presentation or coming to take a tour, and that's still on the table. If you know, when things kind of settle back into you know, some semblance of normalcy, you know, we'd be more than happy to take your group out for a tour and actually come through the waste energy facility and see how that runs. It's one thing to watch a YouTube video on I'm sorry, what'd you say, Patricia?
No, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was just saying this presentation made the tour even more appealing because there was some interesting things to see. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you have Patricia, you've got my contact information, and Doug, you've got my contact information. So please feel free to reach out at some future point, and I'd be happy to take you through the facility. And hopefully that's sooner rather than later, because I think everyone's getting a little bit cooped up, and for good reasons, I know. But it'll be good to get back into doing these things in person.
Recycling. Know what to throw. Recycling can be complicated. With good intentions, people often throw the wrong things in their recycling cart. This contaminates good materials and can make it so all the items end up in the garbage. To make sure your recycling efforts don't go to waste, follow these tips. Tip number 1. Not all plastics are recyclable. There are 7 types of plastics marked number 1 through number 7. However, only plastic containers marked with a number 1, number 2, and number 5 belong in your curbside recycling cart. Tip number 2. Keep plastic bags out of your recycling cart. Always place your recyclables loosely in your cart. Plastic bags wrap around equipment at the facilities that sort our recyclables, which are known as Materials Recovery Facilities, or MRFs. If you want to recycle plastic grocery bags, bring them to a bag return bin at your local grocery store or big box retailer. Tip number 3. Recyclables should be clean, dry, and empty. The companies that want your recyclables don't want the food that was in them. A quick rinse is enough to clean most containers. Use a knife or spatula to remove hard-to-clean foods. This will save water. Everyone can help. Tip number 4. Treat rechargeable and lithium batteries as hazardous waste. Lithium and rechargeable batteries can start fires in the back of garbage and recycling trucks, at MRFs, and other waste facilities. Rechargeable and lithium batteries should be brought to the Olmsted County Hazardous Waste Facility or a participating retailer. Never throw these batteries in your curbside recycling or garbage. Tip number 5. Shred less to avoid a mess. Shredded paper cannot be recycled in your curbside cart. Its small size makes it impossible to sort at a MRF. It slips through sorting screens and often sticks to other materials. If you want to recycle clean, white shredded paper, bring it to the Olmsted County Recycling Center Plus. Tip number 6. Not all glass can be recycled. Glass bottles and jars, such as beverage bottles and salsa jars, can be recycled endlessly. However, dishware, mason jars, and window glass cannot be recycled in your curbside cart. Throw these types of glass in the garbage. Tip number 7. Don't strangle your recycling bin. Tanglers include holiday lights, electrical cords, rope, and garden hoses. Like plastic bags, these items wrap around sorting equipment and cause problems at MRFs. Light strands and electrical cords can be recycled at the Recycling Center Plus. Garden hoses and rope should go in the garbage. Tip number 8. Remove packaging materials before you recycle your cardboard boxes. Cardboard can be pulped and recycled into new cardboard or paper products. Styrofoam, bubble wrap, and packing peanuts cannot be recycled in your curbside cart. Throw these items in your curbside garbage. Tip number 9. Got questions? Ask the Waste Wizard. It can be difficult to remember what goes in your recycling bin. Fortunately, there's help. Visit olmstedwaste.com and use the Waste Wizard. It's easy. Just type in your item and press search. The wizard will tell you what to do. It's up to each of us to recycle right. For more information, visit olmstedwaste.com or call 507-328-7070.
There's a proper place for your waste in Olmsted County.